They forced her to sweep the floor at the party. Without knowing she was married to the mansion's owner, Amanda felt the weight of their stares upon her as she firmly gripped the broom handle. The laughter echoed through the luxurious hall like blades cutting through her dignity, and every cruel word made her press her lips together to hold back the tears threatening to escape. That's when Victoria, the sister-in-law, approached with a malicious smile on her lips and deliberately spilled the glass of red wine at Amanda's feet. "Look what you did," she shouted theatrically, pointing to the red liquid spreading across the Italian marble. "Now clean up this mess. That's all you're good for anyway, isn't it?" Victoria's three friends laughed even louder, one of them even pulling out her phone to film the humiliating scene. Amanda lowered her head, feeling her face burn with shame, and knelt on the cold floor to clean up the spilled wine. "How ridiculous," murmured one of the guests. "Where do these party planners find these maids? Looks like they don't even know how to clean properly," added another, provoking a new wave of laughter. What none of those people knew was that the woman kneeling on the floor, wearing the simple waitress uniform, was actually the owner of that imposing mansion. Amanda Miller Thompson, wife of businessman Richard Thompson, one of the richest men in New York, was only there to help a friend in need. 3 days earlier, Jennifer, her former co-worker, had called in desperation. The event company she managed was going through a financial crisis, and an important contract had been cancelled at the last minute. Jennifer needed to work at the benefit party at the Thompsons' mansion, but her young daughter was hospitalized with pneumonia. "Amanda, I know it's a lot to ask, but could you fill in for me?" Jennifer had begged over the phone. "It's just for one night. The payment will really help me with the hospital bills." Amanda didn't hesitate to accept. Richard was away traveling to close an important deal in Washington, and she knew Jennifer desperately needed that opportunity. What she didn't imagine was that Victoria, taking advantage of her brother's absence, had organized that party without authorization. The sister-in-law had always looked down on her since the day Richard announced their marriage. To Victoria, Amanda would never be more than an opportunist who had seduced her brother to take advantage of his fortune. The fact that she had grown up in a simple neighborhood in the outer boroughs of New York was a constant source of mockery at family gatherings. "Keep cleaning," ordered Victoria, poking Amanda with the tip of her shoe. "And when you're done, you can go get more champagne from the kitchen. Our guests can't be kept waiting." Amanda took a deep breath and continued wiping the floor, ignoring the malicious comments coming from all sides. She thought of Jennifer, of her sick daughter, and of the relief that the money from that night would bring to her friend's family. On the other side of the hall, Mrs. Margaret, Amanda's mother-in-law, watched everything in silence. The 68-year-old woman had her graying hair tied in an elegant bun and wore a navy blue dress that enhanced her light eyes. She knew her daughter's cruel temperament very well, but had always chosen to remain silent to avoid family conflicts. This time, however, something different stirred in her chest. Seeing her daughter-in-law being humiliated in that way was awakening feelings she had tried to suppress for years. Margaret knew that Amanda was a good woman, hard-working and dedicated, but the family's pride and prejudices had always spoken louder. "Mrs. Thompson," whispered Dorothy, the longest-serving maid in the house, approaching discreetly. "Aren't you going to do anything?" Dorothy had worked at the mansion for over 15 years and had witnessed the family's transformation since Amanda's arrival. She knew better than anyone who really ran that household and how the lady of the house had been essential to the success of the business. "I can't get involved, Dorothy," murmured Margaret, averting her gaze. "You know how Victoria gets when someone crosses her." "But the lady of the house doesn't deserve this," insisted Dorothy, her eyes welling up. "She's the kindest person I've ever known." Meanwhile, Amanda continued working in silence, serving drinks and cleaning up what the guests deliberately dirtied. With each passing hour, the humiliations intensified. Victoria seemed to be immensely enjoying the situation, inventing unnecessary tasks and making increasingly sharp comments. "Oh, what a shame my brother isn't here to see this," said Victoria, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I'm sure he'd love to know what kind of people are circulating through our house." Her friends laughed like hyenas, and Amanda felt a pang in her heart. She thought of Richard, probably still in his business meeting, with no idea what was happening in his own home. Their marriage had been an unlikely fairy tale. 5 years earlier, Amanda worked as a secretary at a small accounting firm when she met Richard at a corporate event. He was enchanted by her intelligence and determination, qualities that shone even through her simple clothes and shy manner. Richard courted her for months, taking her to simple dinners and long conversations about dreams and plans for the future. When he finally asked for her hand in marriage, Amanda was sure she had found not just a husband but a true companion. The Thompson family, however, did not receive the news with enthusiasm. Victoria was the most vocal in her opposition, arguing that Richard was being manipulated by a fortune hunter. Margaret, though more discreet, also showed her disapproval through subtle comments and disdainful looks. But Richard would not be swayed. He saw in Amanda something his privileged family had lost over the years: authenticity, humility, and a genuinely kind heart. The wedding was held in an intimate ceremony, with only a few close friends present. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the first years of marriage, Amanda worked hard to be accepted by her husband's family. She studied etiquette, learned about wine and art, and tried to mold herself to the standards of New York high society. But nothing she did seemed enough to win Victoria's respect or her mother-in-law's genuine affection. What the family didn't know was that Amanda had been essential to saving the Thompsons' business during a serious financial crisis 2 years after the marriage. While Richard struggled to keep the company running, she used her accounting experience to identify flaws in their investments and suggest strategies that saved millions of dollars. Richard had decided to keep his wife's role a secret, fearing the family would start to see her only as a useful tool instead of respecting her as a person. It was a decision he now questioned, seeing how Amanda was still treated like a stranger after so many years. The charity gala Victoria had organized was supposedly to raise funds for a local orphanage, but the truth was quite different. For 2 years she had been diverting significant portions of the money raised at similar events to fund her extravagant lifestyle. The jewels she wore that night, the imported car in the garage, and the constant trips abroad were all paid for, with money that should have gone to needy children. Richard didn't suspect anything, as he blindly trusted his sister and rarely checked the financial reports for the family's charitable endeavors. Amanda, however, had noticed some irregularities in the bank statements that crossed her desk when she helped Richard with the general administration of the business. Numbers that didn't add up, suspicious transfers, and unexplained expenses that she hadn't yet found the courage to mention to her husband. While serving canapés to a group of businessmen in the corner of the hall, Amanda overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. "Victoria really deserves congratulations for organizing so many charity events," commented a gray-haired man. "It must be quite a task, managing all that money." "Oh, she has a special talent for optimizing resources," Victoria replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We always manage to maximize the impact of every donation." Amanda instantly understood what those words truly meant. Her sister-in-law was practically admitting the scheme in front of everyone, confident that no one would grasp the insinuation. It was at that moment that she made a decision that would change the course of that evening. Instead of continuing to be humiliated in silence, she would start gathering evidence of what she was witnessing. Not just of the humiliations she was suffering, but of the crimes her sister-in-law had been committing. Discreetly, she took the phone she kept in her apron pocket and began recording short snippets of conversations. The device was on silent mode, and she took care that no one noticed her movements. "Amanda!" shouted Victoria from across the hall. "Stop standing around and come clean the buffet table. The guests are complaining about the mess." Obediently, Amanda headed to the indicated table, but her heart now beat with a different energy. It was no longer just resignation that she felt, but a growing determination to seek justice. While collecting dirty plates and glasses, she noticed that one of the guests was watching her with particular attention. It was a man of about 40, with dark hair and a face that seemed familiar to her. He wasn't laughing like the others, but rather frowning with an expression of discomfort. "Excuse me," said the man, approaching her when Victoria moved away to greet other guests. Could you tell me your name? Amanda hesitated for a moment, but decided to answer. Amanda, sir. Amanda, he repeated thoughtfully. You wouldn't happen to be Amanda Miller, who worked at Williams Accounting a few years ago? Amanda's heart raced. She vaguely remembered that face, but couldn't quite place him completely. Yes, I am, she replied cautiously. My name is Michael Anderson. I'm an investigative journalist. You helped me greatly when I was investigating fraud in mid-sized companies. I remember your analysis was crucial to uncovering a tax evasion scheme. Amanda remembered now. Michael had approached the company where she worked years ago, seeking technical information about accounting for a news story. She had devoted hours of her free time to explaining complex concepts in a way he could understand and convey to the public. What are you doing here? Asked Michael, clearly confused. Why are you working as a waitress? It's a long story, sighed Amanda, looking around to make sure no one was listening. I'm helping a friend who couldn't come to work today. Michael studied her face for a moment, noticing the sadness and tiredness in her eyes. This isn't an ordinary party, is it? He asked quietly. I'm noticing some strange things here. Like what? Well, for starters, the amounts being announced for the fundraising don't match what I'm seeing in actual donations, and some of the people here, let's just say they have questionable reputations in the business world. Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. If Michael, an experienced journalist, was noticing irregularities, perhaps her suspicions about Victoria were more serious than she had imagined. Do you think something illegal is happening? She whispered. I'm almost certain, replied Michael. And from what I can see, you're being used as a distraction. While everyone is having fun humiliating you, no one is paying attention to what really matters. At that moment, Victoria approached again, her face red with anger. What are you two whispering about over there? She asked sharply. Amanda, you're not here to make friends. Get back to work. Excuse me, said Michael politely. I was just complimenting the excellent service this young lady is providing. It's rare to find such dedicated professionals. Victoria looked at him suspiciously, but forced a smile. Oh, of course. Well, she still has a lot of work to do. Amanda, go to the kitchen to get more champagne and be quick about it. As she headed to the kitchen, Amanda reflected on the conversation with Michael. Perhaps it wasn't a coincidence that an investigative journalist was present at a party where crimes were being committed. Maybe someone already suspected what Victoria had been up to. In the kitchen, she found Dorothy preparing more trays of appetizers. The older maid had red eyes and seemed to have been crying. Dorothy, are you all right? Amanda asked kindly. I can't stand to see this anymore, my dear, Dorothy confided. 30 years working for this family, and I've never seen such wickedness as what's happening today. What do you mean? You don't know, ma'am, but I overheard Victoria's conversation with her friends in the bathroom. They had been planning all of this from the beginning. They knew you were coming to work today and prepared this whole humiliation. Amanda felt her blood run cold. How did they know? Victoria had someone follow Jennifer for weeks. When she found out she was having financial difficulties, she created this situation so you would come in her place. Everything was planned to humiliate you in front of all these important people. The revelation hit Amanda like a punch to the stomach. It hadn't been a cruel coincidence. It had been a meticulously planned trap, using her kindness and a friend's desperation as bait. But why, Dorothy? Why would she do such a thing? Because she's afraid, my dear. Afraid that Richard will realize you're worth more than the whole family combined. Afraid of losing the influence she has over him, and mostly, Dorothy hesitated. What? Afraid that you'll find out what she's been doing with the money from the charity events. So Dorothy knew too. Amanda wondered how many other people were aware of her sister-in-law's crimes and remained silent out of fear or convenience. Do you have proof? Asked Amanda. I have documents hidden in my room. Statements, receipts, notes that Victoria thought she had thrown away. I kept everything because I knew that one day this would come to light. Why did you never tell Richard? And you think he would believe me over his own sister? Dorothy shook her head sadly. Rich men only believe in notarized documents. Amanda understood the bitter logic behind the maid's words. Even with all of Richard's kindness, he came from a world where a domestic worker's word carried little weight against that of a family member. "Dorothy, I need you to help me," said Amanda with determination. "Let's expose all of this today." "How, my dear?" "I don't know yet, but it will work out. I have a journalist at the party who already suspects something, and you have the proof. We just need an opportunity." Dorothy studied Amanda's face for a long moment, seeing a strength that hadn't been there at the beginning of the evening. "All right. But be careful. Victoria is dangerous when she feels cornered." When Amanda returned to the hall with the champagne trays, she noticed that Michael was discreetly talking to some guests, asking questions and jotting down answers in a small notebook. He was investigating, and that gave her an idea. She approached Mrs. Margaret, who was sitting in an armchair in the corner of the hall, watching the party with a melancholic expression. "Would you like anything else?" she asked politely. Margaret looked up and for the first time that night really looked at Amanda. She saw the tiredness, the sadness, but also a dignity that hadn't been broken, despite all the humiliations. "Sit here for a moment," Margaret said softly. "I can't, Ma'am. Victoria will get angry." "I'm still her mother," Margaret replied firmly. "Sit." Amanda obeyed, placing the tray on a nearby table. For the first time that night, she could relax her tense shoulders. "Did you know I lost a daughter?" Margaret asked unexpectedly. Amanda was surprised. Richard had never mentioned a sister. "I didn't know, Ma'am. She died when she was your age, pneumonia. Back then, we didn't have the treatments we have today." Margaret took a deep breath. "She was like you. Kind, hard-working, always thinking of others before herself. I'm so sorry for your loss. When Richard first brought you home, I saw my lost daughter in you, and that frightened me." Margaret looked directly into Amanda's eyes. "Frightened because I knew that if I let you into my heart, losing you would hurt like losing a daughter all over again." Amanda felt her eyes fill with tears. She was finally understanding her mother-in-law's coldness over the years. "But today, seeing what my daughter is doing to you, I realized it's already too late. You're already in my heart, and I was a fool to try to prevent it." "Mrs. Margaret, don't let me finish this sentence without first asking for your forgiveness," interrupted her mother-in-law. "Forgiveness for all these years of coldness, forgiveness for not defending you when I should have, and forgiveness for raising a daughter capable of such cruelty." Tears now streamed freely down Amanda's face. Those words represented something she had waited for through 5 years of marriage. "I forgive you," she whispered, "and thank you for telling me about your daughter." "Victoria isn't bad by nature," Margaret continued, "but money and power have corrupted her. She's forgotten values I tried to teach her when she was a child." "Do you know about the money discrepancies?" Margaret sighed deeply. "I've suspected for months. Numbers that don't add up, excessive spending. But I haven't had the courage to face the truth. What if I said we have a chance to do the right thing today?" "How?" Amanda quickly told her about Michael, about the recordings she had made, and about the documents that Dorothy was keeping. Margaret listened to everything in silence, and when Amanda finished, there was a renewed determination in her eyes. "What do you need me to do?" "Just cover for me when the time comes, and be prepared to support Richard when he finds out the truth about his sister. You can count on me." At that moment, Victoria approached again, clearly annoyed to see Amanda sitting and talking with her mother. "What's this intimate conversation?" she asked sarcastically. "Amanda, you're not being paid to give my mother therapy." "Actually," said Margaret, standing up with all the authority of her years, "I asked her to sit down, and now I'm asking you to stop all this nonsense." "Mother, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. I understand that you organized this party without your brother's authorization. I understand that you're humiliating an innocent person for pure pleasure. And I understand that it's time for this to end." Victoria turned red with anger, but didn't dare confront her mother in front of the guests. Instead, she turned to Amanda with blazing eyes. "You! To the kitchen now!" Amanda obeyed, but now with a plan in mind. In the kitchen, she found Dorothy waiting with a small box in her hands. "It's all the documents," said Dorothy. "Statements, receipts, notes, everything is here." Amanda took the box and hid it in a kitchen cabinet, mentally noting the location. Then she returned to the living room and looked for Michael with her eyes. He was near the bar, carefully observing the interactions among the guests. Amanda approached with the excuse of serving drinks. "I found evidence," she whispered, while pretending to clean the counter. "What kind of evidence?" "Documents that prove embezzlement from the charity funds, years of fraud." Michael became visibly excited. "Where are the documents?" "Hidden in the kitchen. But I need a reason to bring them without raising suspicions." "Leave it to me," said Michael. "In 5 minutes, I'll create a distraction. When that happens, bring everything." Amanda agreed and went back to circulating through the living room, pretending to work while waiting for Michael's signal. Her heart was beating fast, but for the first time that night she felt she had control over the situation. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, Michael went to the center of the living room and lightly tapped a glass to get the guests' attention. "Excuse me, everyone," he said loudly. "I'd like to make a special toast to our hostess, Victoria Thompson, who has managed to raise so much money for charitable causes over the years." Victoria smiled, thinking she was receiving public praise. The guests gathered around, raising their glasses. "According to my calculations," continued Michael, "just in the last 2 years, over $500,000 have been raised at events like this one. It's an impressive amount to help underprivileged children." Murmurs of approval echoed through the room. Victoria kept smiling, but Amanda noticed something forced in her expression. "That's why I'd like to suggest," Michael went on, "that our hostess tell us exactly how this money has been used. I'm sure the guests would be fascinated to hear about the specific projects that have been benefited." Now Victoria began to show nervousness. She stammered some words about various projects and detailed reports, but couldn't give specific answers. While everyone was focused on the awkward conversation in the center of the living room, Amanda discreetly ran to the kitchen and grabbed the box of documents. She brought it to Michael, who was managing to keep Victoria in the spotlight with increasingly direct questions. "Thank you," whispered Michael when she approached. "Now stay close for when I need you." "Actually," said Michael, still speaking to the whole group, "I brought a little surprise for this party. I'm an investigative journalist and I've spent the last few weeks researching charitable actions in New York." Victoria's smile completely disappeared. How interesting to discover that several supposedly charitable events in the city have numbers that simply don't add up. Money that should reach orphanages and charity institutions disappears along the way. "I think you should stop these accusations," said Victoria, trying to maintain her composure. "This is a private party." "You're right," agreed Michael. "That's why I brought documents." He opened the box that Amanda had delivered and began taking papers out. Bank statements, receipts, notes. Everything proving that the person responsible for organizing these events has been systematically embezzling funds intended for charity. The guests approached, curious and shocked. Victoria tried to take the documents from Michael's hands, but he held them firmly. "And the person responsible for these crimes is here with us tonight," Michael announced dramatically. "That's a lie," shouted Victoria. "These documents are fake." "Then you wouldn't mind if I contact the beneficiary institutions to confirm the amounts received?" Michael asked calmly. Victoria turned pale. She looked around, seeing the expressions of shock and disapproval on the guests' faces. Some people began to move away from her, as if dishonesty were contagious. I can explain," she stammered. "Please explain," said Margaret, approaching the group with an expression of deep disappointment. "Explain to your mother how you managed to completely lose the values I tried to teach you." "Mother, it's not what it seems." "It's exactly what it seems," interrupted Margaret. "You stole money from needy children to fund your personal whims." The ballroom fell into absolute silence. Even the background music had stopped, as if the very atmosphere were shocked by the revelation. It was at that moment that Amanda heard the sound of a car pulling up forcefully at the mansion's entrance. Tires screeching on the gravel driveway, a door slamming hard. She knew those sounds. Richard had returned. The main door burst open and Richard Thompson entered the ballroom like a hurricane. His dark hair was disheveled, as if he had run his fingers through it during the entire trip back from Washington. The grey suit he always wore to important meetings was wrinkled, and there was an expression of contained fury on his face that Amanda had never seen before. He stopped at the entrance to the ballroom, his eyes quickly scanning the scene before him. The silent guests, Michael holding documents, Victoria pale as paper, his mother with an expression of deep sadness. And in the middle of it all, his wife dressed as a maid, with tear stains on her face. "Can someone explain to me what is happening in my house?" he asked in a dangerously low voice. Victoria tried to speak first, but Richard raised his hand to silence her. "Dorothy sent me a message," he said, looking directly at Amanda, "saying that my wife was being humiliated at a party I never authorized. I cancelled a $2 million meeting to come here." "Richard, I can explain," began Victoria. "Can you explain why my wife is dressed as a maid in my own home?" Richard approached Amanda, taking off his jacket and placing it over her shoulders. "Can you explain why there's a party happening here without my authorization?" It's a charity event." "And can you explain," continued Richard, his voice rising, "why a journalist is here with documents that apparently prove fraud?" Michael stepped forward and extended the papers to Richard. "Mr. Thompson, my name is Michael Anderson, investigative journalist. These documents prove that your sister has been embezzling funds from charity events for at least 2 years." Richard took the documents and began flipping through them. With each page he read, his face grew stiffer. Bank statements, forged receipts, notes about operational expenses that were actually personal spending. $500,000, he murmured, reading one of the statements. $500,000 that should have gone to St. Mary's Orphanage. "Richard, you don't understand the whole situation." Victoria tried again. "I understand perfectly," Richard exploded, throwing the papers on the floor. "I understand that you are a thief. I understand that you use the family name to steal money from orphaned children. And I understand you humiliated my wife while committing these crimes." He turned to the guests who were watching the scene in complete silence. "This party is over," he announced. "I ask everyone to leave immediately." The guests began moving toward the exit, murmuring among themselves about the scandal they had witnessed. Amanda knew that by the end of the week, all of New York high society would be talking about Victoria Thompson's crimes. When the hall was empty, only the family remained. Richard, Amanda, Victoria, and Margaret. Michael also stayed, holding a copy of the documents. "Now I want the complete truth," said Richard. "I want to know exactly what happened here today." It was Margaret who spoke first. "Son, your sister organized this party specifically to humiliate Amanda. She found out that Amanda would be working in place of a friend and created this whole situation to publicly shame her." "Is this true?" Richard asked Victoria. I just thought it would be fun," stammered Victoria. "Fun?" Richard was incredulous. "You thought it was fun to humiliate my wife?" "She's not good enough for you, Richard," Victoria finally exploded. "She never was. She's from a lower class, uneducated, unsophisticated. You deserve someone better." The silence that followed was even more intense than before. Richard looked at his sister with an expression that mixed disappointment, anger, and sadness. "You want to know who isn't good enough?" he said slowly. "You want to know who truly has no class?" Richard walked to his work desk in the corner of the hall and picked up a thick folder. 2 years ago, when our company was almost bankrupt, it was Amanda who saved everything. He opened the folder and pulled out reports and spreadsheets. She identified where we were losing money, suggested new investments, reorganized our financial structure. Victoria was speechless. She worked entire nights, weekends, holidays, without receiving a single penny for it. And do you know why? Because she truly loves me, not for my money. Richard approached Amanda and took her hands, which were still trembling after all the tension of the evening. "I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to protect her from envy and resentment, but now I see that was a mistake." He looked directly at Victoria. "Amanda is worth more than our entire family combined. She has something you never had. Character." "Richard," Victoria tried. "I'm not finished," he cut her off. "Michael, are these documents enough for a formal complaint?" "More than enough," replied the journalist. With this, your sister could be convicted of fraud, embezzlement, and running a criminal scheme. Good. I want you to file the complaint tomorrow. Richard, you can't do this to me, begged Victoria. I'm your sister. A sister who steals from orphaned children is no one's sister, he replied coldly. You have until tomorrow morning to return all the money you stole. After that, I never want to see you again. And where am I supposed to get $500,000 by tomorrow? Sell the jewelry you bought with stolen money. Sell the car. Sell the apartment. I don't care how. But you will return every single penny. Victoria began to cry, but they were tears of self-pity, not genuine remorse. Mother, say something to him, she begged Margaret. What do you want me to say? Margaret replied sadly. That I'm proud of raising a thief for a daughter? That I think it's right for you to steal from needy children? I made mistakes, but I don't deserve to be thrown out of the family. No, Margaret agreed. You deserve worse. You deserve jail. It was at that moment that Amanda finally spoke. Richard, stop. Everyone looked at her, surprised. Amanda, after everything she's done... I know, Amanda interrupted gently. I know she humiliated me. I know she stole money. I know she planned all this out of pure malice. But I don't want revenge. How can you not want revenge? Asked Richard, confused. Because revenge won't help the orphaned children who need this money. Because revenge won't make our family better. And because I learned, growing up in the outer boroughs, that true strength lies in choosing forgiveness even when anger would be easier. Amanda approached Victoria, who looked at her with suspicion. I forgive you, she said simply. I forgive because holding on to anger would hurt me more than it would hurt you. But forgiving doesn't mean there won't be consequences. She turned to Richard. I want her to return the money, of course, but instead of banishing her from the family, I want to propose something different. What? I want her to work voluntarily at the institutions she harmed, without pay, without recognition, just serving the children she stole from, for 2 years. Amanda, began Victoria. I'm not finished yet, Amanda continued firmly, and I want her to live with us during this period so we can help her understand what real family means. Richard was clearly surprised by the proposal. Are you sure? I am, because banishing someone from the family is easy. Transforming that person is hard, but that's what real families do. Margaret approached Amanda with tears in her eyes. Now, I understand why my son fell in love with you, she said emotionally. You have a heart bigger than all of us combined. Do you accept? Amanda asked Victoria. Victoria looked around, seeing she didn't have many options. She could accept Amanda's proposal, or face the legal consequences of her crimes. I accept, she murmured. Then it's decided, said Richard. But with one additional condition. I want you to ask for forgiveness truly from Amanda, not just to escape punishment, but because it's the right thing to do. Victoria hesitated for a long moment. Pride and shame battled on her face. Finally, she approached Amanda and knelt on the same Italian marble floor where she had forced her sister-in-law to clean spilled wine. Amanda, her voice was choked. I ask forgiveness for everything I did to you, for all these years of humiliation, for today, for planning to hurt you. I ask forgiveness for not seeing that you were always better than me. Amanda knelt too, coming to the same level as Victoria. Forgiveness accepted, she said, embracing her sister-in-law. Now let's build something better together. Michael, who had observed the entire scene in silence, finally spoke. This is a story the world needs to hear, he said. Not about the crimes, but about forgiveness and redemption. Would you allow me to write about it? You may write, Amanda agreed, but focus on the transformation, not the destruction. In the months that followed, the Thompson family's life changed completely. Victoria sold all assets acquired with stolen money and managed to fully return the misappropriated funds. She began working as a volunteer at St. Mary's Orphanage, initially reluctantly, but gradually developing genuine affection for the children. Richard began officially including Amanda in all aspects of the family business, publicly recognizing her contribution to the company's success. He created a scholarship program for youth, from underprivileged neighborhoods, inspired by his wife's story. Margaret grew definitively closer to Amanda, and the two developed the mother-daughter relationship both had always secretly desired. The mother-in-law began accompanying Amanda on her visits to underprivileged communities, discovering a reality she had always ignored. Jennifer, the friend Amanda had helped, managed to overcome her financial crisis and expand her event planning company. She became the official organizer of all the Thompson family's charitable actions, ensuring every dollar reached its intended destination. Dorothy was promoted to house manager, receiving a fair salary and the recognition she deserved for years of dedication. She became one of Amanda's closest confidants, and their kitchen conversations transformed into precious moments of genuine friendship. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. But the most significant change happened with Victoria. At first, she performed her volunteer duties with resentment, seeing them only as a way to avoid prison. However, as she spent more time with the children at the orphanage, something inside her began to awaken. It was during an October afternoon, 6 months after the fateful party, that Victoria experienced the moment that would change her life forever. She was helping feed a 5-year-old boy named Ethan, who had been abandoned as a baby and had developmental challenges. "Aunt Victoria," said the boy, placing his small hand in hers, "will you come back tomorrow?" "Yes, I'll come back, Ethan," she replied, surprised by the sincerity in her own voice. Why? The simple question made her pause and reflect. Why did she come back every day? At first it was obligation, then habit. But now, "Because I enjoy being with all of you," she answered, realizing it was true. That night, Victoria came home with an expression Amanda didn't recognize. It was no longer the mask of resentment or the calculating look from before. It was something resembling peace. "Amanda," she said, entering the kitchen where her sister-in-law was preparing dinner, "can I talk to you?" "Of course, what happened?" "Today Ethan asked me why I come back every day, and when I answered, I realized it's not out of obligation anymore." Amanda smiled, recognizing what was happening. Children have that power, don't they, to show us who we really are. "How do you forgive people so easily?" asked Victoria. "I treated you horribly for years, and you welcomed me into your home as if I were your real sister." "Because holding on to grudges is like carrying a stone in your chest," explained Amanda. "The heavier it gets, the harder it is to move forward, and I prefer to travel light. I want to learn to be like you. You don't need to be like me. You need to be the best version of yourself. And how do I do that? Keep doing what you're doing, keep caring for the children, keep trying to be better every day. The rest comes naturally." 2 years had passed since that conversation. Victoria had completely transformed, becoming not only a dedicated volunteer but also a fierce advocate for underprivileged children's rights. She used her social influence to raise legitimate funds and raise awareness among other wealthy people about their social responsibilities. Richard and Amanda had moved to a smaller house but kept the mansion as headquarters for their charitable foundation. The place that had once been a scene of humiliation had become a center of hope and social transformation. Michael had written a book about the family's story, focusing on themes of forgiveness and redemption. The book became a success, and all proceeds were donated to charity. The story inspired dozens of other wealthy families to rethink their priorities and social responsibilities. Margaret, now 70 years old, had become one of the foundation's most active volunteers. She often said that the last few years had been the most meaningful of her life because she had finally found a purpose greater than her own comfort. One December morning, exactly 3 years after the party that changed everything, Amanda woke up with a special feeling. It was her and Richard's anniversary, but it also marked 3 years of family transformation. She went down to the kitchen and found the whole family gathered preparing breakfast. Richard was making pancakes, poorly made but with love. Victoria was helping Margaret cut fruits, and Dorothy was supervising everything with a maternal smile. "Good morning, family," said Amanda, hugging each one. "Good morning, love of my life," replied Richard, giving her a long kiss. You two, joked Victoria. You're already over 30. Stop with that mushiness. Everyone laughed. The Victoria from 3 years ago would never make such a warm and relaxed joke. We have a surprise for you, announced Margaret mysteriously. What kind of surprise? St. Mary's Orphanage wants to honor you tonight, explained Victoria, for everything you've done for them these years. I didn't do anything special. Amanda, said Richard, holding her hands, you created a program that has already benefited over 1,000 children, inspired dozens of families to get involved in social work, transformed our family from a group of rich and selfish people into a true, united family. And more importantly, added Victoria, you taught me that it's possible to change, even when everyone believes you're beyond repair. What you don't know, said Amanda with a mysterious smile, is that I also have a surprise. What surprise? Everyone asked at the same time. Amanda placed her hand on her belly and smiled. You're going to be a grandfather, grandmother, and aunt. The silence that followed was broken by shouts of joy. Richard lifted Amanda off the floor and spun her around the kitchen. Margaret started crying with emotion. Victoria clapped like a child, and Dorothy murmured prayers of gratitude. A baby, whispered Richard, still not believing it. We're going to have a baby. He or she will grow up in a real family, said Amanda, a family that learned the value of forgiveness, second chances, and unconditional love. And will learn early on that true success in life isn't measured by money or social position, added Margaret, but by the ability to make the world a better place, completed Victoria. That night, during the tribute at the orphanage, Amanda looked around and saw smiling faces of children who now had hope for a better future. She saw dedicated volunteers who had been inspired by her story. She saw her united and transformed family. When it was her turn to speak, she stood up and looked at the audience. 3 years ago, I was kneeling on the floor of a mansion, being humiliated by people who thought they were better than me. Today, I'm here surrounded by people who truly are better than me, not because they have more money or social position, but because they have more love in their hearts. The audience applauded, but she raised her hand asking for silence. I didn't save anyone, you saved me. You saved me from a life without purpose, from a family without true love, from a world where people's worth was measured by their bank accounts. I learned that humiliation can be the first step toward humility, that pain can be the beginning of healing, and that forgiveness can be the start of transformation. That's why I thank that terrible night 3 years ago. I thank it because it showed me who I really was inside, and gave me the opportunity to show my family who they could become. Today we are a real family, not perfect but real, and it's this real family that I want to leave to the son or daughter who is coming. When Amanda finished speaking, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Victoria stood up and hugged her sister-in-law, whispering, "Thank you for not giving up on me," in her ear. Richard kissed his wife's forehead and murmured, "Thank you for teaching me what real love is." Margaret held Amanda's hand and said, "Thank you for giving me a daughter." Dorothy, who was serving sweets to the children, just smiled and nodded, knowing her prayers had been answered. And Michael, who had documented the entire family's journey, closed his notebook and sighed contentedly. He had witnessed something rare, a complete and genuine transformation. The party continued late into the night, with children running across the courtyard, volunteers chatting excitedly about new projects, and the Thompson family finally united by something greater than money or blood, by true love. When they got home that night, tired but happy, they sat in the living room and stayed silent for a few moments, just enjoying the feeling of completeness. "You know what's the most amazing thing about all this?" asked Richard. "What?" replied Amanda. 3 years ago, if someone had told me that my sister would be one of the kindest people I know, that my mother would become a social activist, and that my wife would transform our entire family, I would have said it was impossible. "Nothing is impossible when there's true love," said Amanda. "And second chances," added Victoria. "And forgiveness," completed Margaret. "And a whole lot of patience," laughed Dorothy. Everyone laughed, and Amanda felt complete. 3 years earlier, She had been forced to sweep the floor of a mansion. Today she owned not just the mansion, but something far more valuable, a family that had learned to truly love. The baby in her womb would be the symbol of that transformation. A child who would grow up knowing that a person's worth wasn't in their bank account, but in their character. A child who would learn from an early age that forgiveness was more powerful than revenge, and that humility was more valuable than pride. When Amanda finally went up to sleep that night, she placed her hand on her belly and whispered to the baby, "You will be born into a family that learned life's most important lessons the hard way. But you will grow up in a world full of love, purpose, and hope." And for the first time in her life, Amanda felt truly rich, not because of the money in the bank, but because of the love in her heart and the certainty that she had helped create something beautiful where there was once only pain. End of story. Now tell us, what did you think of this story of transformation and forgiveness? Do you believe Amanda made the right decision by forgiving Victoria? Share your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to leave your like to support our channel. Subscribe so you don't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.